The Blessed One, the Lord, who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to the teaching which he expounded so well, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well. To these the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we render with offerings our rightful homage. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, still had compassion for later generations. May these simple offerings be accepted for our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Now let us pay preliminary homage to the Buddha. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. It'll take a few minutes just to um, settle in. Recollecting one is in a particular time in this consciousness. And, consciousness at the moment can pick up silence, uh, gentle sounds, non-violence, um, um, presence, even if it's only virtual, of other people who are inclining in the same direction as you are. And just keeping your body relatively stable. Doesn't mean rigid, means stable. And appreciating that these qualities, the consciousness picking up such signs, signs of ease, non-obstruction, and stability. It may be, and it's not unusual, for the mental consciousness to switch to something that's irritable, physical discomfort, unresolved things one wishes to do, distasteful memories. Kind of instinctive that is. It will return, so this is a sign of irritation, dukkha. Whatever the details are, try to just lift off the details and acknowledge the sign of dukkha, the impression of that, and then the craving, the wanting to change that. Something kind of itchy. Tanha. Turn again, right now. No one is bothering you. There's nothing demanded of you. Context you're in, non-intrusive, non-obstructive, encouraging, and maintaining a certain stability in the body. And if the body is uncomfortable and irritable, try to find your spine in that. And as you incline towards that spine, that spinal sense, to the body's experience, though it's still not irritable, and it's not kind of interesting, but it's stable. Sign of stability. And then using or tuning into the movement of breathing out as a conducive support from mental attitude of releasing. That sign, that sign of letting go. That takes you into somewhere feeling flat or what's the pointless. And also tune into the sign, breathing in, the given, expansive, uplifting sign. Not so much the sensations, but the meaning or the impression they have, the nimitta, the sign on the heart. And so as the effect of relieving some of the pressure of the sign of dukkha, it becomes something that we get perspective on because there's that counter sign, stability, release, gladness, relief of the pressure of the dukkha. And then that release, that relief, there's a certain, we could say, a certain spaciousness. The knowing of dukkha, the awareness of dukkha. And how does that feel? How is that experienced for you? You tune into that rather like tuning into a radio channel. And it's a place or a signless sign, no particular quality to it except what it's not. We're a place where the energies of dukkha, frustration, impatience, quarrel, exasperation, grief, anxiety, you wrap this space, this emptiness around them. Becomes rather like water which dissolves because water, that's its nature, the nature of non-clinging. You feel our hurt, our grumble, our complaint quite clearly without going into it, without suppressing it. And this kind of non-clinging element accept, takes those in or receives those, and rather like ink dropping into the ocean, they sort of dissolve, diffuse and empty. Please avoid trying to figure out what just do it. mm. That focus can't be maintained, then return again to your signs of stability and security. To rebuff the overwhelm that dukkha can throw us into. So just a few little points there to perhaps be able to return to. Mm. What manifests in consciousness and keeping it very much here and now and using a supportive situation, taking that kind of refuge helps to check the flooding effect of the mind that has no stability, where it's made unstable, shaken. I mean, however, those experiences of stability and ease arise, those are your primary counteractors. And this can be done with images, visualizations, mantras. They provide a kind of definite thing that your attention can hold on to check this flooding overwhelm, which if it's not checked, tends to reiterate and proliferate. Must check it. Otherwise, there's no real leverage. And then recognize whatever you use, a sound, a sight, an image, using your own body. It's not exactly the thing, it's the impression the thing gives you. Oh, here's a safe place, here's a place out of that's not swept away by the tide. You call that your sign. Your beneficial sign. Then you begin to review your anxieties, your negativity about yourself, your problems with other people, sickness, grief, and so on. Again, a lot of can be huge amount of detail in that. Just lift a little. This is the sign of dukkha, and how rapidly one's attention goes to that and really gets involved with it and tries desperately to explain it or blame it or work it out. No. Lift, you just get the broad overview. This is the experience of unresolved, incomplete, irritating, and there's this craving to stop it. Yeah. Now, instead of the craving to stop it, can we come to a place of it's like this now? Now it's manifesting, it can't be another way. How much I'd like to be another way, it can't be another way. And just tune into that truthfulness. And there's the truth of opens into this, what we call the non-clinging. And then noticing that and how if we can kind of linger in that, the possibilities of wrapping or using that as a basis on which one's dukkha can touch but be diffused. This is a kind of abbreviation, if you like, of first two noble truths. And the first three noble truths. In the path means how you, the energies, the attitudes, and the scope with which you use to bring this around. So, brief note there on that meditation. Now, I'd like to address some of your questions, and we'll take some time. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes, Lampo.
Good. So, person says, I wish I have an urge for an inspirational imagination arising. It shows itself as a wish to be inspired by images, fantasies storing inspiring images, etc. I find it hard to connect with Buddhist mythology. Neither does the factual approach of, quote, seeing things as they are, unquote, seem to be beneficial all the time. It leads me to a feeling of deprivation of the imaginative faculties of my mind. Mm. Another related question, another related point, person says there's some people and places that just seem to have a special effect on me. I have so many positive feelings just by thinking about them. It feels like a gift in my life, but I often wonder, is this real? Or is this a projection of something I have inside that is activated by the idea I have constructed of that object? Mm. So actually, these two are related. It's the nature of Citta's activities, mm, which is to create signs, impressions. Mm. See, the Citta doesn't actually itself connect to the senses. Well, it connects to the mind sense, you see. So the mind sense, mano, swivels around, scanning all the sense door, all the sense fields, sight, sound, touch, and it kind of gets a few scraps because there's a lot going on, and it drops that. There's a dialogue between the mind and the heart, whereby the citta gets the meaning. Oh, you know, oh, that's good, or that's tasty, or that reminds me of, I feel joyful, because that's the nature of citta, is to just get a perception and then the feeling, pleasure, and then there's some kind of shiver of uplift, or of course, the opposite. Something reminds me of that which I find distasteful. So that's its nature, or its conditioned nature. So we have to work with that, and person notices some people, being with them just brings it up. So okay, then fine. Then meditate or bring such people to mind, dwell upon it, dwell upon them. And what actually, could you give me a list of meanings? Friendly, reliable, happy, attractive, that arise, those kind of those impressions that arise when you think of that person or that place, spacious, comfortable, and so forth. So then you've got the nimitta, you see, the mind, the sign that rests in the heart. You can linger in that and then begin to allow the more sensory images of people's faces or actions or places, just kind of let them fade and try to linger on the meaning, the impression, the nimitta. And then you can, how you feel with that, because it has a stabilizing, gladdening effect. Let go of the images and stay with that heart state that's arisen, and use that as your entry to what we call meditation. And you're now standing in a good place, then begin to stabilize that by experiencing what your body feels like in that state, whether it feels weightless, stabilized. There's an embodied quality to it. And that makes it firm. And from there, the mind, our attention's got a good basis, because at that moment it's free from being negatively affected. And then there can be a gathering into that samadhi effect, and having the opportunity then to contemplate conditions. Now, similarly, the person seeking inspiring images, a wish to be inspired. Well, yeah, probably we all need that. because of the uh, many unhappy circumstances that we're witness to or involved with. And, the behavior of other people being really suboptimal. Sub so in images, but then finding Buddhist mythology, yeah, these images have kind of developed over centuries, and it may be that culturally you're not tuned in, you don't tune into it, because Tibetans will get it immediately because it's so established. Um, or Sri Lankans, if they established, they would get it quite quickly because their whole culture is um, adorned with these. In fact, what we might say the culture is the kind of mythologies, the images, the legends, the characteristics, what is decided as being noble or courageous or brilliant. So that's what a culture is. And of course, we're all basically humans everywhere, whatever, same thing. So but we can't always get the same cultural thing. So, you want to really look at or tune into what is gladdening, stabilizing, uh, uplifting, um, and then ask yourself, how does that appear to you? Light, visual light, uh, color, form, and so forth. And then whatever it is, you can then, or a time when you were very happy, mm, or imagining some place where you could be serene. And then you sort of begin to kind of draw back from that image to the experience. And it may be that you find certain images or impressions have a greater effect on, or more happier effect on you than others. Now, this is pretty much the practice of recollection, although in the suttas it's a set quite categorically. You recollect the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and not just what they look like, but what they carry. Integrity, compassion, discernment, awakening, veracity, reliability. Of course, these words are so abstract. So this is why, of course, although over the millennia, gradually people began to fashion Buddha images and do paintings and statues and murals and develop chanting and so forth, because a word like reliable or even a word like awakening, it's just a sound in your head. See, something a little more fully tangible. And that's kind of what culture is about. And within that we can cultivate bhakti, which is a heart-opening devotion to those to that quality. And people like some like more female qualities. People like to have Kuan Yins or something like that, which we call classically, that's called the female, or the reliable, the steadfast, the cool, more male qualities. It's all just conjuring trick, really, but it works. But don't get lost in the trick. That's all. Use it until it's captured the chitta, or chitta's got involved with that, and then begin to withdraw from the image to the result it has on your chitta. Your heart is cool or uplifted, and then you can bring your body into it, how that feels in your body, and you can use that as your entry to discernment, and loving kindness. Standing on that place, you begin to can undo some of the compulsive tangles and taints that oppress the chitta. comment on the spirit of Dhutanga, practice and relinquishment of the will. This guidance will be helpful for a lay person who has recently retired and wants to simplify and avoid jumping into another role. The spirit of Dhutanga. Dhutanga means something like to shake off. It means to shake off attachments. And classically, these Dhutangas generally meant you took on something that is really rather difficult or unpleasant in order to develop a kind of fortitude and resolution in the face of difficulty that has a strengthening effect. For example, eating one meal a day is considered a Dhutanga because you can't have the nibble, you can't have the comfort eating, you can't do snacking. Um, yeah, so that's considered. But then those urges, those itchy urges, you've made your resolution on one meal a day, or when it's morning or evening or whatever it is, then that particular energy of, oh, God, nibble, and I feel distracted, I feel unhappy, just suck something. Oh, stop it. So then you have to face the irritability and the restlessness and the oral gratification urge, and you face it, and then using that resolution, look insightfully into that which one has begun to separate oneself from. So this is a typical Dhutanga practice, and it's a confrontation with one's habits and reflexes. So anything that does that is considered Dhutanga. It could be, even getting rid of some of your furnishings, or particularly if you're retired, you should do a death clean. I hope you're not saying you die soon, but we're all going to die. So we look at lovely little trinket I've got. What's that good? Somebody else is going to inherit it. Why don't I give it to a charity shop? So just kind of decluttering and of stuff that you've got used to but no longer serves a purpose. That's a really good cultivation to do in the retired state of life. Then, probably more deeply, if you've been an active person with a job and a function, leader of a family or whatever, relinquishing one's role, which again is quite difficult because we are used to doing that. We're used to managing that. We're used to sorting that out. We're used to being in charge of that. You've got to say, no, no, no. Get used to that. And you can feel quite frustrated and helpless in that. Just, I want to stop it. So you really then kind of looking at the bhava tanha, that compulsion to configure oneself in a particular familiar role or position. Yeah, that makes sense. I am the abbot. So okay, well you're not anymore, but you still end up sounding like one because you're used to it. So this is why I relinquish that. And also, when I go out traveling on public transport, I'm no longer the Dhamma teacher. I'm just some funny old guy with a robe sitting in a seat in a train, And that's okay with me. I'm quite, I sort of enjoy that to a certain extent because it just perspective on what you get used to being, These are good things to do. Go out of your comfort zone. Go out of your familiarities. So these are then Dhutangas, or the spirit carrying the spirit of Dhutanga. They mean discomfort and require patience and determination to persevere, and they're about not becoming a super strong person, but actually not becoming a person. just begin to switch that off however you can. Going out of habits, going out of your normal customs and routines, where at first we feel fidgety because I don't know what to do, or I'm used to doing something. No, stop it. And that relinquishing the will to be something, do something, and so on. Now we must also, counteract that kind of relinquishing with an inspiration. It's not just about being useless, it's about putting down the usefulness in order to be clear. So when we've relinquished that, what is the clarity or the stability that begins to form, becomes apparent? And then, oh yes, there is a sense of strength and clarity and not self. It's not me. And then that becomes something that really confirms what you're doing. So you're not doing it to prove you're a great ascetic or whatever. You're doing it to stop having to prove anything or be anything. Okay. So this is a rather more complex technical question. Person begins with a quote from I imagine it's a Dzogchen teacher. Dzogchen might be aware of, it's a kind of one of the Tibetan Nyingma practices of realizing non-dualistic awareness. I'm probably not giving it full credit, but it's quite known in the West. Anyway, this Rinpoche says, you cannot make enlightenment because enlightenment is unconstructed. Realizing the awakened state is a matter of being diligent in allowing non-dual awareness to regain its natural stability. Is there any correlate within the Pali teachings and the Thai forest to a non-dual awareness or Rigpa? So we'll take that bit. Well, of course, enlightenment, whatever that is, realization is unconstructed, but the path, in most teachings, there is a path to it. The path is constructed, just like you go to a mountain or something, you climb up the mountain. The view is not constructed, but the climbing up the mountain definitely was constructed with sticks and effort and lungs and legs. That was all constructed. Then you get to the top of the mountain. Okay, stop your constructions, and wow, yeah. So there's a simple image of it. But I would suggest it takes considerable training and discernment and diligence to enter and sustain non-dual awareness, because sense consciousness is dualistic. In other words, seeing, I see, that's two of us. There's the seen and the seer. Hearing, I hear. There's the hearing and the hearer. Hearing and the heard. You see, so that's what we call dualistic, right? And they kind of co-arise. Seeing, oh, I'm seeing something, right? Two. Yeah. Now, certainly, in this advice to Bahia, where the Buddha says, in the seen, let there just be the seen, then there is no seer, no should be seen, no about to be seen. This is the end of suffering. So, pointing to a kind of non-dualistic realization where this dualism of subject and object collapses. It's just, there's just consciousness seeing. There's nobody seeing. And we might say there's not even anything, we're not defining what we're seeing, just the eye is open. So it's a kind of empty, non-configuring state. So this is certainly touched upon in the Pali Suttas, but I've got a few quotes here. One from the Um, Dzogchen Master Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, very famous, great Dzogchen master. He says, the idea of an enduring self has kept you wandering helplessly in lower realms of samsara for countless past lifetimes. It prevents you from liberating yourselves from conditioned existence. If you could simply let go of that one thought of I, you would find it easy to be free and to free others too. Maybe it doesn't sound so difficult. So use any practice to dissolve this idea of I and the self-oriented motivations that accompany it. Even if you do not succeed in the beginning, keep trying. So what is being said there is this is a big thing. It does take resolute and continual effort to do it. It's not just a matter of, oh, here we are, you know. So it can be understated, just simply rest in a non-dual state. Yeah, you know, um, maybe it's not that easy. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche isn't saying it's that easy. But then he says, let the mind remain in a relaxed but open state. Just as a young child cannot be left on its own but needs constant attention of parents so he won't get lost, mindfulness is necessary so that the mind does not get lost in distraction. Mindfulness is not something that's acquired right away. Perseverance is needed. It's necessary to be mindful not only in the state of meditative evenness, but mindfulness needs to be kept in any circumstances while eating, walking, etc. It is important to constantly be alert and vigilant in watching the condition of the mind. Now, this to me sounds just absolutely straight Theravada meditation practice, you know. So, and so he also says, do not be satisfied by a mere glimpse of awareness, but allow it to be unchangingly present. This is achieved through mindfulness and vigilance. It means to pay constant attention to one's state of mind, examining whether the mind is distracted or not. Mindfulness will develop gradually. When the point is reached where a thought of desire or aversion arises, awareness is there at the same time without having to purposefully arouse it. That is uncontrived absolute mindfulness in which thoughts, as they arise spontaneously, discharge. This is so saying, this is kind of, you can see this is a Dzogchen master saying something that certainly, most conventional Theravadins would say, yep, that's mindfulness, all right. But there's kind of what this awareness is one of the issues. Because certainly we want to know what is it that is able, this mindfulness, which is a distinct, different from awareness, what is it that's aware of all this thing? Yeah? And so even when the mind kind of empties out. Now we have a saying here from the Mahasi Sayadaw, again, very highly respected, renowned Burmese Theravada meditation master. And he says, there's times there is nothing to note, with the body disappearing and a sense of touch lost. However, at this moment, the very act of knowing, the knowing consciousness, that which knows, is still apparent. In the very clear open space of the sky, figuratively speaking, the sky of the mind, there remains only one very clear, blissful consciousness, which is very clear beyond comparison and very blissful. The yogi tends to delight in such clear, blissful consciousness, but this consciousness is not going to stay permanent. It has to be, therefore, one just note it as, this is knowing, and I did not get attached to it. let go of that. So, comparing some of these masters, and they're not very far away from each other. Language may be, we're also looking at translations from Tibetan and Burmese into English, which doesn't necessarily have all the words that we like. So you get a bit, what's consciousness, what's awareness, what's knowing, Now, actually, when people talk about the forest tradition, Thai forest tradition, it's a kind of blanket term, but there are many different forest lineages. Um, there are a range of forest teachers and lineages, and they have some of them. They're generally not scholars, so they're what they when they express their realizations, they're often kind of cryptic or metaphorical terms, or often they're quite reticent about making any claims because of the sense of, you know, we don't want to be claiming anything because it just gets people too stirred up. And, main thing is you do your practice. Whatever I'm at, I'm not talking about. So there's kind of a lot of reticence about making statements. So now, often one person who does make statements is the meditation master Ajahn Sucitto, who talks about a deathless citta, which certainly gets people excited or irritated, depending which way it affects you. But he says this is not the same as luminosity. You know? Now, the question to return to this question asks, what is the relationship between the citta, which is intrinsically luminous, nibbana cessation, and the anidasana vijnana, which is described as endless and luminous all over, and seems to correlate to the cessation of consciousness. Let's take this a step at a time. The citta was intrinsically luminous. Well, there's a couple of places in the canon, Pali canon, where it does say very boldly, very briefly, this citta is luminous and it's tainted with defilements. The next one, this citta is luminous, it's undetainted by defilements. So it seems to refer to a kind of state, and most commentators consider this to be like a samadhi state where there's still remnants of defilement, and then the samadhi state where these defilements are passed away. So we have a luminous citta. But again, by and large, the Theravada tradition sort of says luminosity itself is a sign that you shouldn't get dazzled by. This too is subject to cessation. Mm-hmm. Cessation. What does that mean? Uh, and by and large, people's interpretations, understandings of the goal, nibbana, comes to two polarities. Nibbana means like a negative, the unbinding or the ceasing or the stopping, and the deathless, which sounds kind of affirmative. There is a something, a quality of some kind, and those two words, run throughout the suttas. So you kind of get in this, and it can kind of, get to the negative side, just everything's got to cease and stop, it's a complete wipeout, or the deathless side, there is kind of unconditioned, unborn awareness that we could linger in. And naturally, these two sides tend to find conflict or try to be resolved. Mm. Now, there are a few references in the Pali Canon, but to these kind of experiences. One is the reference to the nun who comes into a kuti and turns down the wick of the oil lamp, so the flame disappears. She says, that's what it's like. It's just like the fire going out. So almost like an end of luminosity. The luminosity itself is a kind of a good thing. It arrives at a state of purity and focus, but don't get stuck in it, because even that has to be relinquished. Mm, mm. So, mm. And then the often kind of, and then we get to the Anidassana Vijnana, and this again stirs up quite a bit, because it's an extraordinary statement in itself in the text, because by and large, I don't know, 95%, maybe more, of the statements about consciousness are, this has to be brought to an end. In fact, in this very teaching on Anidassana Vijnana, I refer to the Digha Nikaya Sutta 11, where consciousness is signless, boundless or unending, all luminous. That's where earth, water, fire, and air find no footing. Their name and form are wholly destroyed. With the cessation of consciousness, this is all destroyed. So you're thinking, well, it's cessation of consciousness. How is it luminous? You know, and so this has been a puzzle for millennia. And some commentators say, well, this particular phrase, first of all, it's in a poetic form, which means that the words have to be jumbled and sometimes compressed to fit into the metrical sequence in they've been used in. Is poetic, so it may be metaphorical. And the two occasions when this word are used, it's always in a dialogue with a great Brahma deity who's going on about the boundless consciousness he's in. He's all seeing, he's luminous, he's radiant, he sees it all, and the sense of, hey, maybe this bit about the boundless consciousness comes not from the Buddha, but from the Brahma deity. And the Buddha is kind of quoting him, saying, well, you say this, boundless luminous consciousness, but I tell you it's where the whole thing shuts down. you know, so some say that actually this Anidassana Vijnana is not actually a Buddhist statement. It's an Upanishadic, Brahminical statement. The Buddha is slipped in there in this dialogue with this Brahma, and the Buddha is saying, well, this is what you say, but actually, I say the end, the cessation is the real thing. Um, that's a viewpoint because we just don't know. Um, uh, but here again, one reference that's used, Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 64, whatever exists therein of material form, feeling, perceptions, formations, and consciousness, sees those states as impermanent, as suffering, as a disease, a tumor, a barb, a calamity, an affliction, as alien, as disintegrating, as void, as not self. Right, so that's the five aggregates. Consciousness is one of them. Turns his chitta away from these states and directs it towards the deathless element. You think, what's that? Thus, the deathless element, this is peaceful, this is sublime, that is the stilling of all formations, that's all creative energies, sankharas, the relinquishment of all attachments, the destruction of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. So that's the deathless property. If that's a thing, or essentially it seems to be a kind of blowing out of all kinds of congestion stuff. But then he says, well, this phrase is used to describe a practice you can do in the first jhana. Standing upon that, platform of the deathless, he attains the destruction of the taints, the underlying drives that generate samsara. But because of the desire for the Dhamma, the delight in that Dhamma, gets really, oh, this is it, I realized it, he becomes born in the Pure Land. So no, it doesn't really, but he may attain Nibbana in that realm. So not actually, this realization isn't actually necessarily even the end of the story. So in this situation, the person has got some valid experience of the deathless or Nibbana, but they haven't yet really completed their work. And this phrase is reiterated through all the jhanas plus the first three formless abiding places, including abiding in the base of nothingness. One sees the same thing. This consciousness is impermanent, unsatisfactory, alien, disintegrating. So, and what I've just said. So, to kind of summarize, I think one is advised to not cling to anything and just keep that relinquishment motif, just keep it going, and that in us which we humans, that in us which naturally wants to, or what's the real answer here? What is it? What is it? This is a kind of craving. And there's a saying in the suttas where there's a dialogue between these two arahants, and one is Sariputta, and the other says, is it true that when the six spheres of sense contact, including mind, so all the consciousnesses, when they cease, is it true that there's something? And Sariputta says, no, no. Is it true there's nothing? No, there's nothing. Is it true there is and isn't? No, that's not true. Is it true there is something? No. Or nothing? No. Well, what is it then? And the Sariputta says, well, you're trying to configure something that can't be configured. When the desire to configure things stops, that's what I'm pointing at. So so we have to even let go of the notion of goal and abide, and notice whenever the clinging, the craving for anything, even nibbana, arises, just keep focus on it, on that motif. So I spent quite a bit of time with that. I would like to see if there's something here. Ways to live wisely with past hurts. In remembering of what particular family did to hurt seems to protect me from future damage, but reading Dhamma teaching is throwing it into question. It now feels like it's remembering what people did to hurt me is a kind of bondage. Keep carrying these stories in my head. Yep. Person says, I've noticed the change within the spectrum of love and hate that surprised me. I've always told that practice doesn't flatten the emotions, and certainly what I've experienced feels less intense. It's not that I feel less for people, but the craving and the attachment are missing in a way that allows me to feel more completely as I don't get lost in it. Very different feel. Help reduce my reactivity, makes interactions much easier to manage. So, this is all past, isn't it? We first of all, we get annoyed, we remember, we carry grudges, seems to be very true. They hurt me, they deceived me, so forth. We can all do that, I'm sure. And probably we can also do quite a number on the things we have done wrong and are stupid, reckless, careless, loudmouth, da 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 da. I am or was, this is my, so we can carry these negative residues around and they fire up again. And here we go again, the same old story, and hashing it out, and more tribunals, and more blaming, and more thinking about what's right and wrong with whoever, and trying to adopt this moral high ground of I am right, or even condemning oneself. So you think, I think there's a lot of energy being used up here. And is it doing anything? Is it going anywhere useful? Will it ever clear out these negative experiences? And my sense is it doesn't. But through stepping out of the story, not saying there is no story, not no, there is a story, but the story's being written now about the past. Sometimes the details are granularly spot on. Yeah, yeah, she's this, and she said one, and then he did that on Thursday and 5 years ago. Yeah, but now you're writing the story. Why are you what is writing that story? Desire for something or the other, justification or blaming or revenge or some weird self-harming instinct that we seem to have. It's so easy for us to get attracted to negativity, including negativity about ourselves. It's so easy. It's so attractive in a weird way. And you think, you've got to stop doing this. It's never going to end. And you're writing the story now. Why do you have to keep writing that story? And of course, you're not writing the story. The story is writing itself. And there's the painfulness. Let's get down to it. Stop writing the story, but also witness the story in its poignancy and its, and there's that. Feels like sorrow, feels like anger, feels like fear, feels like, you know, this is not going to end by writing more about it. It ends. First of all, I can stop it by just coming into my body and calming the body. Just walk up and down, feel the straightness of the body. And then it's still, so then you can feel this negativity swimming around you. Okay. And there's the story haunting you. And then, don't fight it. Don't try to get rid of it. Don't fight it. That's that. Don't feed it. It's like living with a deranged person. They're still jabbering away, but now you're going, ah, kind of not shut up even, just ah, and the kind of sympathetic dispassion and disengagement, and you're not trying to make it stop. Just, and even tell me more. Tell me more. So you start to work with this story as it haunts you. And then by working with it, you acquire a kind of dominance over it, because now you're, instead of running from it or buying into it, you're now picking it up, saying, "Tell me more. What's this about? How's it feel?" Yeah? And it starts to lose its power. And you get this quality called, could be forgiveness. That's the word that works for you, or compassion, like everybody gets this, everybody has stories, everybody writes stories, everybody has a reason to write stories, or a desire to write stories. They all cause themselves pain and pain for others. Oh, wow. Yeah. And then enough of this dispassion, relinquishment of the desire to be right, relinquishment of the desire to be right. Because it's a form of bhava tanha, desire to be something. I want to be right. If only I could be right. If I didn't have these terrible things, I'd be right. I'm right and they're not right. Give up being right. Then you see, Citta, it's like this. And the grip begins to fade. And so those, again, it could be that those are referring to real-time events, but bear in mind, every memory is a distortion. Who you are is a distortion. Who you were is a distortion. What you will be is a fantasy. Do you need to keep this going? And so that sort of dispassionate and compassionate and stable, coming from a place of stability, holding the energy steady so we just don't keep leaking our heart into this story. Then you return, bring the heart back to now. Yeah. And of course, if we have made mistakes, all of us have, we say, now that is past, I'm here now. And this is how fascination, hate, adoration, claiming oneself to be anything, claiming oneself to be superior, inferior, or anything, is just all that. Enough, finished, done. This is a valid way we can use these rather unpleasant experiences as doorways to awakening and realization. Beautiful qualities. So relate to it, relate to this skillfully. It's a very common experience. So thank you, friends. I've tended to extend the time today. I hope that's okay. And thank you for those of you who have persevered. I hope some of this has been of use for you. And I hope that we can tune in again at a time in the future. So let's sign off with the let's take nice little images flashing across the screen. Thank you very much for the appreciation.
Anandamayam Dhammakataya Sadhukadam Dadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodhami.
Perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha.
Paul, please allow all of us here to show our appreciation by offering you the three vows. Brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, let us all now offer our three respectful vows. That's right. Second vow.
Okay, stay in the stream, and let's hope we can meet up again. Time we haven't figured out a time yet, because I think next month is quite busy month. October is various katinas to go to deal with, and so I think Peter and I will be in touch to see when we can link up again at some time. So stay tuned in, and may you be well, and may your practice be strong and resolute.